from Atlanta, Georgia, this is the Kos Sports Show. Hi everybody, welcome back to the Kos Sports Show. I am your host, Andrew Koster, and today we are going to be going over what all the upsets that happened in Week 7 of the college football season, as well as look ahead to the action in Week 8. Plus, we also have a very special guest on the show today. Blake Harris from Harris Highlights will join me to talk about one specific upset as well as what's going on in the Pac12 for college football. But anyway, let's get to it. As you guys know, there were 7 teams that went down in the top 25 this week. That is a lot. It feels like 2007 all over again, which is considered the year of the upset. And this also included 4 top 10 teams as well. So that was a big deal. And we're going to start off with the first one, of course. This was very sad for me to watch, and that was Clemson losing on Friday to Syracuse. I don't understand why they have these big teams play on Friday. I mean, in general, not just Clemson, but any of the big games. I just don't feel like they're anything to get from those. Those I feel like are for high school football, really. I mean, yes, ESPN, I get it. They want their ratings up. I think that's just also a little bit ridiculous. But that's beside the point. That's not why Clemson lost, even if it was Friday the 13th, blah, blah, blah. But Clemson they didn't play well as a team, especially on defense. They came out very flat. It was very depressing to watch this game. This defense did not look like it had earlier in the season when they were just shutting people down. I really have no words for it. It was kind of just very flat and didn't do anything really from the get-go. Yeah, they had a scoop and score touchdown in the game, but I mean, as a whole, this is not the defense we have been watching the previous 6 weeks of the season, to say the least. But also, the thing that really hurt Clemson in this game is injuries. You know, Kelly Bryant, of course, went down during the game with a concussion, of course, and he came into the game. He already had I believe, a sprained ankle. So I honestly sometimes wonder why Clemson started him. I mean, he wasn't 100%. I would have just rested him for Syracuse and prepared with either Zara Cooper or Hunter Johnson, whichever one Dabo would have gone with. And I just don't understand still why he didn't do that. I mean, because now they weren't expecting to play, so they have to come off the bench in a very tight game. I feel that really hurt them as well. But also a big issue was Travis Etienne. That's one of the big running backs for Clemson. Also tweaked his hamstring on his long touchdown run. I mean, you know, it was a big deal. It's a big deal. Clemson, and also coming into this game as well, they already had one of their star corners in Marcus Edmond, the guy, of course, last year who made the big play, 4th down stop against Louisville, and the big interception that beat NC State in overtime. So that was also a big deal as well. But at the end of the day, they're not out of the playoff chase. They are still in the hunt easily because if you look at their strength of record, they're still being 2 top 15 teams, one of the only 2 teams in the top 25 to do so. So it's still a huge. It's still like people said, all of a sudden, Clemson's gone. And I remember last year when Clemson lost to Pittsburgh. Right after that, a lot of other teams lost. I think Michigan lost, Washington lost in the same night. So they didn't fall that far. I mean, we'll get to the AP poll in a minute, but Clemson falling to 7, I think, is very reasonable. And I think if they went out there easily in the playoff, they don't have an easy schedule, though. I mean, of course, this bye week, though, for them couldn't come at a better time with all the injuries and stuff. But if you look at this team, though, they're still a very good football team. They just need to get healthy. You know, they're as good as anyone when they're healthy. But I think a lot of people were just more surprised just because of how dominant they've been. I was too. I mean, I really didn't think Clemson would have a huge issue with Syracuse, but I think Syracuse also had some payback on their minds from last year when Clemson beat them 54-0. And so I think they were remembering that, and that was a huge deal. But, you know, like I said, Dabo has come out, and he said it was on the coaches, and I think the coaching wasn't as great. I mean, they did do some good things that Clemson did on offense at times, but at the end of the day, they need to just be able to win these close games when you're not playing on your best or you're playing your best game. I mean, they've had that a couple times early in the year, but they need to start playing with a sense of urgency in these not so big games. One thing I also feel is that Dabo Swinney sometimes also, I think, puts the backups in too early. I get it. He wants experience, but I think you need to get a little more comfortable with your lead rather than make it closer and stuff. I mean, yes, I get it. He's not about style points, and I respect that. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure you have a very comfortable win. I think that he may start doing that going forward. And he's just got to make sure to not look over any of these opponents. And I don't think they will. I mean, next week, or not next week because they have a bye, but in 2 weeks they have Georgia Tech coming into the town. It'll be a primetime game, and I think they're going to bounce back, though, after this game. I think Georgia Tech is very unfortunate in the fact that they have to play Clemson coming off a loss, because you remember last year after they lost, they went to Wake Forest and just absolutely dominated them. But but Clemson's not going to go anywhere. They're not going to just all of a sudden go on a skid and just fall off the map. They will be just fine. I think there's still easily a good chance they can make the playoff. But it's just, that loss was terrible. But, going back, though, talking about the Friday games, I don't like this in general. I didn't like the fact that USC and Washington State playing on Friday, considering they were both preseason top 25. I didn't like the fact that Washington State and Cal play on Friday night. I think those games should be more meant for the MAC or Conference USA or any of the Group of 5 conferences. But it's just weird. But I get what ESPN's trying to do. They want the money, but it's mind-boggling to me. But anyway, like I said, Clemson's not going anywhere. They're gonna be fine. They just need to. Venables will figure what he did wrong there. The whole team as a whole will get healthy, and I think Clemson can easily win the ACC and easily make the playoff. But anyway, now we're gonna go on to Washington getting upset by Arizona State, which of course Washington was number 5, and this was also a big deal because I think for Washington, they were the Pac-12's best hope as a whole. But I mean, I feel for them, man. I feel for a lot of the other teams, but at the same day, I'm just glad Clemson wasn't the only one that lost. But this was a whole different Washington team. Or I think it was also the fact that Arizona State was also very underrated. And we're gonna go ahead and get Blake Harris on the line here, hopefully, from Harris Highlights. Of course, if you guys don't know, Blake is a pretty good friend of mine over at, of course, he goes to Arizona State, so he was at this game. So I'm going to get his comments on this game, as well as some other stuff on the Pac-12 here. But also what I noticed, though, is Arizona State also had a very good defense tonight as well. So that's also going to be very good for them going forward. I think usually we talk about their offense this year, but I think their defense finally showed that they can be ready to play going down the stretch. So, but anyway, we're about to get Blake Harris here on the line. Like I said, I'm actually very excited for this. Blake one time let me call into the Harris Highlights Show, and it was a big deal. But anyway, hold on. All right, so now we have Blake Harris on the line. Blake, welcome to the Kos Sports Show.
How's it going, Andrew? How are you today?
I'm good, man. It would be better if Clemson hadn't lost this weekend, but I know you had a heck of a weekend down at Arizona State with Sun Devils upsetting Washington.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what in fact went down this weekend, my man.
I mean, dude, this weekend was a weekend of madness to say the least. But anyway, I had guys, in case you didn't know, this is Blake Harris from Harris Highlights. Of course, the GOAT of all the college football highlight channels. In case y'all didn't know, definitely was a guy who I used to learn to start making good highlight films and stuff. But anyway, let's go. I have some questions for you, Blake, and I'm going to first start off with the fact that this was Arizona State's first win over a top 5 team since 1996 when Jake Plummer was the quarterback at Arizona State. What was it like being able to witness this game?
I mean, from the opening kickoff, I mean, ASU on that first drive, they stopped Washington, which, was a shocker just in itself, and then they scored on the field. Man, I think it was like an 8-minute drive, and they scored a touchdown. So right away, they're up 7-0. You can kind of tell that something was going on. And for the most part, ASU the entire game, the defense was just stepping up. And you're talking to your friends, and you're going, are we going to upset them? Is it really going to happen? And after Washington missed that second field goal, I mean, I think you watched the entire game, and that kicker, he missed 2 essentially chip shots. So after he missed that second one, you can kind of tell that something was definitely brewing. But definitely the atmosphere there. I mean, there were some good games last year, but there's no way to describe really how it was going down because, like I said, the way the defense was performing, it's as if we were watching a completely different. I thought I was watching Clemson's defense for a second there. It's something that we've never seen in the 2 years that I've been there. And the final drive, it's just we were waiting. We were waiting for that one Jake Browning play like Dante Pettis or something that just be a long play that ASU secondary would allow, as they normally do, and it just never came. So, I mean, no other way to describe it. It was just a magical night.
I agree, man. And, the defense for Arizona State was phenomenal. I think one thing they were talking about while I was watching the game on TV, and they talked about, I think Todd Graham said that they changed the schemes up a little bit. What I've heard in the past is that Todd Graham likes to bring a lot of blitzes, kind of like how Brent Venables does at Clemson, but he changed it up, I believe, is what I've heard, and I think it really helped them but they played very well. I was very impressed, considering how much they were talking about how they were undersized and stuff. They didn't look like they were going to back down at all. Which leads me to my next question for you. Arizona State, all their losses have been to some very quality teams: San Diego State, Texas Tech, and Stanford. Do you think this win can help maybe turn the tide for them, and also could they end up potentially running the Pac12 South?
I mean, that's a very good question. I've been saying all along, I think Arizona State, at least coming into the year, was my sleeper coming out of the South. You just touched up on it. Their 3 losses have come against quality teams. Now, granted, San Diego State and Texas Tech, they're not ranked anymore since they fell out, so that kind of hurt us a little. But all of their losses, granted, they've been against top 25 teams, and they've been, I believe, within 7 in the fourth quarter for all those games. So Arizona State, I mean, yeah, you look at the record, you see 3-3, not too hot, but all of us ASU fans over here, we're very, very impressed with what we've been seeing. As, like I mentioned, the defense, which is far better than last year. In regards to the South, I do believe, though, it is SC's to lose. But in 2 weeks, SC does come down to Tempe, and there's going to be an amazing game. I can't miss Arizona State USC. If Arizona State can somehow pull off the upset and take down USC, I think they're going to run away with the division. Because, like I said, looking at the South, UCLA, they're kind of falling off. Colorado's falling off. Utah, I think they're a good team, but they are 1-2 in conference. I'm not sold on Arizona. I think they're a good team. We'll have to wait and see. But I do think, though, like I said, ASU, it all comes down to that USC game. Stranger things have happened, but we're going to wait and see. But like I said, I'm very impressed with ASU so far this year.
I have been too, but I know this game in 2 weeks between USC and Arizona State is going to be a big deal for you, since you did grow up a diehard USC fan.
Yeah.
But anyway...
That's going to be a tough one. I mean, I'm conflicted on who to root for in that game.
Well, if it makes you feel better, my first game as a freshman at Clemson, I grew up a diehard Georgia fan. My first game was Clemson at Georgia, so I was completely torn on that. So I completely understand what you're going through with that. But anyway.
Yeah, the worst part is my family's going to be in town, too. So it's like, so I got all my USC family members rooting for USC, and I just am the one lone ASU fan, so... It's going to be a very conflicting day, so hopefully it's just going to be a good game.
Well, I think it will be. USC is, while they haven't really blown anyone away besides Stanford, they've still been a solid team. And, I mean, despite all the injuries they've had, they're still getting the job done. I've been still pretty dang impressed with them as well. Which also leads me to my next question here. How much does the Washington losing to Arizona State hurt the Pac-12's chances of getting a team into the playoff?
That's a very good question. Me and my friends were trying to figure this out. Like, does it hurt us? I think overall the Pac-12 is going to be fine. I mean, you look at the AP poll, and there's no real teams that really stand a shot, but that's the AP poll. The College Football Playoff, it'll be much different. I think as of right now, USC still probably has the best chance of making it, mainly because the rest of the schedule is fairly easy. Because you look at Stanford, Washington, and Washington State, those 3 teams still got to play each other. So there's going to be 1 or 2 more losses each way there. So in regards to those 3 teams, I don't really think anyone has a chance unless one of them just completely went out, do it convincingly, and then beat USC in the Pac-12 title game. Or should I say potentially beat Arizona State in the Pac-12 title game? We'll have to wait and see. But I think for the Pac-12 overall, there's no need to worry. The season's halfway over. But if there is going to be one team that does have the best chance, I think it is USC, as I mentioned, because of just the easier schedule impact.
Well, I mean, it's not going to be completely easy. And was it 2 weeks, I believe, they have to, or next week, actually, they have to go to Notre Dame. Yeah, I'm very intrigued about this game because Notre Dame, I feel like, is a team that people have been sleeping on as well.
Oh, completely. I mean, I think they're ranked 13th right now. Their only loss is to Georgia, who I think it's like number 3 in the polls right now. That was by 1 point. So this Notre Dame team, I'm just glad it's finally going to be. It seems like it's been a while since there's been a good Notre Dame USC matchup where both the teams were ranked like in the top 15. So I'm definitely excited for this week. I'm just happy that I get to watch the Arizona State game at 12:30 here, and I think the USC game's at 4:30, so I get a 2-for-1 special there.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be awesome. I'll be definitely watching this at both of those games at Clemson. I'm very intrigued for that. It'll be nice since we have a bye, so I can watch a lot of these games. But also, I have another question for you regarding Arizona State. Who is the one player on Arizona State that the whole country should be keeping an eye on?
Now, if this was last year, I would have said Kalen Balaj, mainly because of his 8-touchdown performance and how much of a beast he was. But if the country does not know the name Manny Wilkins, that is a name they honestly need to get to know right now. Manny Wilkins has been, we were talking about this, we did our Harris Highlight Show last night. One of the questions was, who do we think currently is like the best performing quarterback in the Pac-12? And we all came to a mutual agreement that it's Manny Wilkins. If you look at the numbers, they don't completely blow you away, but he just gets the job done. Last week against Stanford, 2 weeks ago, he threw his first interception on the year. His completion percentage is through the roof. And he's just a very good quarterback. In the Pac-12, he's the number one deep ball passer, which, you think of guys like Sam Darnold, Luke Falk, Jake Browning. You thinking Manny Wilkins is number one. It's hard to believe, but Manny Wilkins truly does it all. He's also very mobile. I'm sure you saw that hurdle.
Oh, I did.
That's kind of what he's known for here. I think he had like 3 or 4 hurdles last year. But Manny Wilkins, of course we had Blake Barnett, who transferred here from Alabama, and everyone was assuming Blake Barnett, he's going to be the go-to guy. Well, Manny Wilkins in the offseason, he won the job. He has completely lived up to the hype. Like I said, the numbers, they won't blow you away. But like I said, you could probably attest to this if you watched the game. Mm-hmm. He led the Devils. He kept him in that game, and he just had an overall good performance. Like, he just doesn't throw picks. It's with Arizona State's offensive line, it's really hard to avoid sacks, but for the most part, he did a fairly good job with that. But Manny Wilkins, man, we kind of gave him criticism last year, but this year he's completely turned things around. And like I said, on this team, very good. But also one quick name, N'Keal Harry, he's the wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I think this guy, when it's all said and done, he's only a sophomore right now. Next year, I assume he's going to leave after his junior season. He has the potential to be a first-round pick. So, N'Keal Harry, I think, one of the more underrated receivers in the entire country.
Yeah, Harry, they were talking about that on ESPN about it. They said he's going to probably end up being a first-round pick whenever he declares for the draft. Their defense also was playing very good. I think it was named Carter Samuel as well was another name I got really kept hearing all night when they were just having a feast and or having a party or whatever in Washington's backfield. But yeah, Manny Wilkins definitely, I believe, he's more of a game manager, I feel, but he's a very solid game manager. He kind of reminds me more of like AJ McCarron or Greg McElroy when they were both at Alabama in that sense. But I think, but Wilkins is, I think, also though, a very solid quarterback for sure. And then also, so of course there was this big upset last night. And I know you've been to a lot of good college football games. What is your most memorable game that you have been to?
It was that USC Penn State Roseville game from this past year, but that completely changed this weekend because, I'm sure you can say this. I think every kid's dream growing up and watching college football is to storm the field. And, being a USC fan, there's never really an opportunity to, but coming here, just getting to storm the field was truly, there's no way to describe it unless you've done it before. It's an unforgettable experience, getting to, just jump around, go insane with the players. And, it was a good game for the most part. It was a very good defensive game. It was definitely keeping me on the edge of my seat. So I didn't think that somehow that USC Penn State Roseville game would ever be topped, but this past weekend it was. So ASU taking down UW, that's the most memorable game of my life.
Oh, I definitely could see that. Both games were both very good, and I was glad you guys were able to storm the field. I remember you kept saying in the group chat, they're like, oh, they're not going to let us storm the field. I'm like, Blake, dadgummit, you are going to storm the field. You have a herd of college students against so many cops. They cannot hold back that many college students. But anyway, going on to my next question here. Does Arizona State get it done on the road this weekend at Utah?
Yeah, like I said earlier, Utah, they're 4-2 now in the season, but their 2 losses have combined 4 points to USC and Stanford, 2 very good teams. It's going to be a very tough game. Utah, I don't know how many games you've seen of them at home. That is a tough environment. That's a very good, very underrated environment there.
Oh, I agree.
I hope ASU can ride out this momentum. We did our pickings last night, and I actually was only to pick Utah to win. because, like I said, I think they're a very good team. But I think ASU can get this done. I hope they can. For all I know is, like, if you want a good, Pac-12 matchup to watch that's kind of under the radar, Arizona State, Utah, that's definitely a must-watch.
Yeah, definitely. I think Utah's been a team that's been under the radar too, especially with even with Hundley, or I think whatever their starting quarterback has been out. Williams has stepped in and played very well for them, and they're just always, I feel like, a team that's always going to give no matter who they play, they're going to give them their best shot. Utah's one of those teams I don't feel like that ever really rarely gets blowout. So this is gonna be a great game. But yeah, I did watch them actually against USC, and man, I thought they honestly were going to run away with it, but USC had other ideas, obviously. But yeah, I think Arizona State also, there's a good chance they will get it done on the road too. I think as long as they just don't have a hangover, I feel, which could happen, but I don't think so. I think this could be a huge turning point for that program as a whole.
I completely agree. And also, a name to check out in that Utah game is Darren Carrington. I know he might sound familiar because that's when he was tearing things up at Oregon. I think Carrington right now is top 5 in the country in receiving yards. He is completely just having an amazing season over there. So that's the name to check out in that game.
I was wondering where I'd seen that name, and now that makes sense. I remember when he was there when tearing it up when Oregon was that year they made it to the national title game against Ohio State. But wow, I completely forgot about him. Oh wow, that's crazy. But going on to this, I have a couple more questions for you. Who is your sleeper going into for the college football season, at least for the second half?
Sleeper, that's good. I think for a sleeper, and I touched on this as well, I think it's Notre Dame. Because, mainly one, they've had such a strong first half of the season, but their schedule in the second half is arguably, I think, the toughest. But if they can somehow get this done, because they still got to play, as we know, they play USC this week. Next week, I think they play NC State. And they still got games against Miami, I think Navy, and Stanford. So if Notre Dame could somehow manage to win a nice little stretch here, we can possibly be seeing Notre Dame in the college football playoff. And another sleeper I want to touch up on as well is Michigan State. I mean, we completely forgot about them last year because I think they won 4 games after making it to the college football playoff. But this year, Michigan State, they only have 1 loss, which came, to Notre Dame. And they're currently sitting undefeated in the Big Ten. So I think Michigan State, they might have a possible chance to even make a Big Ten push. We're going to have to wait and see. But as of now, those are like the 2 that currently stand out to me.
I can totally see both. I especially agree with Notre Dame. That Georgia loss they had by 1 point is looking better and better by the week, just the way how Georgia's playing. And I think Notre Dame is also a way better team than they were last year. I mean, you look even last year, they had, I think, 7 combined games where they lost by a total of 32 points or something like that. So they were that close to being on the other side of the spectrum in that sense. And I also agree with Michigan State. I mean, you look at their 1 loss to Notre Dame. I mean, yeah, they didn't really, I don't think they were really in that game for the most part, but besides that, they took care of business against Michigan, and I can't remember the coach's name at the moment, but but they're always going to be, I feel like, good teams in dogfight. I think that they have definitely turned it around. LJ Scott is killing that thing at tailback for them as well. I've been always enjoyed watching him ever since he was a freshman. But I think, yeah, Michigan State could definitely make a push for the Big Ten East, which is definitely going to be very competitive. I still have Penn State coming out of the Big Ten East, but I think that's definitely a very fair sleeper there as well. All right, so I have one more question for you, Blake. It's been a rough year for Chattanooga. Your boys down the Mocs, they've been getting upset a lot. But do they start turning things around this weekend when they play the Citadel?
Dude, I mean, I have no clue what's going on there in Tennessee or Chattanooga. It has not looked pretty at all this year. They do have only 1 win on the season. They were upset by LSU. They were upset by Mercer this past weekend. But I think they're going to turn things around. I mean, all their games, they have looked competitive. Kareem Orr, the former Arizona State Sun Devil, he's performed well back over there. But, I mean, I don't think it's any time to worry. I still think the team is kind of rattled after being upset by Alabama last year. So I think it's kind of like a little year hangover, should you say. But I think the Mocs, I think they're going to be fine. I'm not pushing the panic button yet on them. So I don't think anyone else should either.
All right, well, I definitely won't because, if they do lose, though, the Citadel, I'm going to be a little concerned because Clemson has to play the Citadel towards the end of the year.
That's not so rude. That could be a tough one for you guys.
Oh yeah, I mean they're always a scrappy bunch. They're always gonna go crazy. They always run a nasty triple option. Thankfully, we'll play Georgia Tech before that. But anyway, guys, that is Blake Harris of the Harris Highlights show and the YouTube channel Harris Highlights. Blake, thank you for being on the show again. I definitely hope to have you on the show later this year. But I hope you also have a great day down in Arizona I know you're out of class right now, just hopefully having a relaxed night, getting all your homework done, and getting ready for this upcoming week of college football.
Of course, I really appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you for having me. And yeah, definitely be back again soon. And hopefully we'll be talking more about Clemson and how they're making a push for the national title, and hopefully no more of these upset losses.
When it comes to that, I think this bye week could not come at a better time for them. I think injuries have just hurt them, and I think also they just lay the dud, and every team usually does that. No team's perfect, even though we all want to say Alabama is. But I think they're gonna hopefully turn it around, because we've seen what they can do when they're playing their A game this year. But I agree with you. Hopefully you guys do end up talking about them in a more positive way.
Oh, I know. And one thing before I go, Andrew, after ASU upset Washington this past weekend, everyone was chanting "We won Bama," but not me. I was chanting "We won Clemson."
Oh, dude, that's awesome. That'd be good. That's awesome. I saw a game day sign a couple weeks ago that someone said they crossed out Bama, and then under it they put "We want Clemson" after they crossed out Bama. But that's awesome, Blake. Well, anyway, thanks for being on the show again. I will definitely be talking to you probably later today in the group chat. But anyway, have a good one, man.
Have a good one, my man.
All right. That was Blake Harris from the Harris Highlights show, everybody. So, of course, like you said, a big win for Arizona State. And I agree with him. Arizona State, I think, has been one of the most underrated teams, and they can definitely make a push in this playoffs, or not to the playoff, but necessarily, but for a Pac-12 title game, and we were talking about, how they lost their 3 games have been originally the top 25 teams. All those teams were in the top 25 coming into this past weekend. But as far as also, I wanted to touch up a little bit on Washington. I was not sold on them coming into this game just because they hadn't really played anybody. Their toughest game was probably Cal last week, which actually looks better now after what California did to Washington State this past weekend, which I will touch on up on this game very shortly. Don't worry. But, it's a big deal. For that Washington lost, their schedule is not the best. Of course, they do thankfully have Stanford, who's playing well, and Washington State. I mean, it would have been better if they had USC, but Washington not having a strong non-conference schedule is really hurting them. I mean, I have looked into it, and when they scheduled Rutgers, I think Rutgers was winning the Big East title. So, to be fair to them, that is understandable. And apparently Wisconsin backed out of a home series with them too. So shame on you, Wisconsin, for backing out of that. That's just pathetic, I feel considering that they really have Wisconsin's overall non-conference schedule has been very poor as well. But, Washington, I think could maybe run the table in the North, but I think definitely agree with also Blake that USC definitely is the favorite because of the non-conference game they have. They have a solid win against Texas. And Texas, I think, is a team that's also under the radar. And then if they beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame this weekend, that's really going to help them. That's going to be a dogfight. And I give credit to USC, all the credit in the world, because they have played very well considering how many injuries they've had. They barely lost to Washington State. They're that close to being undefeated. But anyway, going back to what this was originally about, this was about Arizona State upsetting Washington. And I thought the defense, though, still for Arizona State was incredible. They were all over the field. And even though they were getting injuries towards the end, their offense then stepped up. And Manny Wilkins, I agree, was a very poised, great game manager. And it has been disappointing to see Kalen Ballage kind of fall off just because we know how good he was last year, and like Blake said. But I think this was not a surprise. I think Arizona State is easily the best 3-3 team in college football right now, and I think they're just going to get better as the year goes on. And hopefully this helps. I heard some talk about maybe Todd Graham getting this being on the hot seat this year. This definitely I feel is going to help save his job for sure. But anyway, moving on to the next game that happened, at least upset in the top 10. Whoa. It was ugly. Cal just ran Wazoo right out of Berkeley. That's really about all I have to say. Luke Fall played absolutely atrocious. 5 interceptions. Just, ugh. I was more disappointed in Washington State because I was really high on them after they beat USC. Luke Falk looked very good, and Mike Leach has been a solid coach, but this was more just a surprise. I'm more shocked at how bad they played. I could see them maybe losing the Cal and just an upset because, anything can happen in college football. The way they lost, it was just embarrassing. And the way I saw Cal play against Washington the week before, they weren't that great in my opinion. Yeah, they gave USC a dogfight, but it was just more disappointing to me. I think definitely this is now Washington State is definitely out of the college football playoff. I would feel, unless a lot of stuff happens in front of them, and they have to easily win the Pac-12 as well. But very disappointed in Luke Falk and Washington State as a whole in this game. But also give credit to Cal for giving them the beatdown of definitely the week. I feel no one ever expected that. But anyway, going on to that now, we also had one more upset in the top 10, and that was Auburn at LSU. And I was kind of torn why I wanted after what happened during this game was because I wanted Auburn to keep doing well because it keeps making Clemson's win against them look better and better. But dang, tell you what, Jarrett Stidham played about as bad as he did against Clemson for sure. I mean, I think it was 8 of 29 in a touchdown maybe, but that was not pretty for LSU. The way they lost too, or I meant for Auburn, but the way they lost too is also very disheartening, I think, in my opinion, for them, because they were up 20-0 and they end up losing, I think, 27-23 or something, like 24 or something like that. But it was just, I will say though, give credit to Ed Orgeron. He, I think a lot of people were starting to get on him for that, but this is, I think, he said that the player, I heard after this game, I don't know if it was today, yesterday, or the day before that his players have finally bought into the system. And I can understand that. Sometimes you just need to do that. Of course, remember, this is his first full year at LSU. Of course, he can thank Auburn for him getting this head coaching job thanks to that controversial game in Auburn last year, which that loss ended up being very respectable loss because Auburn was a solid team. I think Auburn still is a very good team, but Jarrett Stidham's got to be more consistent, though, I feel. That is the one thing I think that's going to hurt Auburn going down the stretch. He can play very well. We've seen him in these past couple of weeks before this play very well. And Kerryon Johnson still had a great game, but the defense also was a little bit more disheartening. Of course, the special teams didn't help them as well. If they had stopped that punt return, they might have won that game, probably more than likely, but who knows. But I'll tell you one thing, LSU is I'm impressed with the fact that they've been able to turn it around these last couple of weeks. Of course, a win last week against Florida, a win this week against Auburn, because of course before that, a week or so before that, they lost to Troy at home, which was outright embarrassing for them. So kudos to LSU, and I think Auburn's still going to be fine. I think they still are definitely the team that will give Alabama their best run, considering that it's the Iron Bowl, and then basically doesn't matter how much you're favored by, it's going to be a dogfight in that game regardless, I feel. But Auburn's fine. I think they're going to definitely improve it down the stretch. But anyway, going into that one, we also have, or off of that, we have potentially almost 3 other upsets of very highly ranked teams, not unless in USC, Oklahoma, and Miami surviving it came down for USC to a 2-point conversion stop against Utah, which was a very gutsy move by Utah, I think, to try and win that game. I mean, I get why they did it, just because in the second half, they had been playing so poorly. I was watching this game before I actually turned it on, the Arizona State-Washington game. Arizona or Utah in the first half looked like they were going to run away with it so hard. Sam Darnold was playing so poor. 3 fumbles in the first half, and one of which was taken back for a touchdown. But then USC turned it around in the second half. But that was got to be very disheartening for Utah. So I get why they went for 2. And then the one that really annoyed me was Georgia Tech losing to Miami. Just the way the lucky Miami has just gotten a little bit, or it's kind of right now the lucky team right now in college football. The ball bounced off the dude's helmet before he caught it. I feel bad for Georgia Tech because I feel like definitely they deserve to win that game. They were just up so much. I mean, I guess Mark Richt does have Georgia Tech's number. We saw it at Georgia, but it's just kind of disheartening. For Georgia Tech, I feel for them just because both of my parents went there. But, at the same time, Georgia Tech's also going to get everyone's best number. I think that loss to Tennessee is just it's not who Georgia Tech I feel really is. If you go back, I think, and play that game again, if they hadn't turned the ball over so many times, I feel they would have definitely won that game. But for Georgia Tech, they're definitely, I think, gonna give Clemson a dogfight. But I think Clemson is also gonna be hungry. And Brent Venables, the last two times they have played that triple option in Georgia Tech, have absolutely crushed it. And it's in fact 2 years ago when they were playing last time they were at Clemson, they held Paul Johnson Georgia Tech offense to his fewest rushing yards in his era at Georgia Tech. So that'll be very interesting. But I think for Miami going forward, I think they will slip up somewhere down the road. And the reason why I say that is because you don't have your best player probably in Mark Walton for the rest of the year. I think really it's gonna come down to Georgia Tech, Miami, and Virginia Tech in the Coastal to see who makes it to the ACC championship game. And I believe it's Charlotte again this year, thankfully. But I just don't think they're going to have enough on offense with Mark Walton. But Hunter did look really good running the ball for them as well. And Rozier is playing still very well offensively. But I think right now I'm still going to take Virginia Tech. I was very high at them coming into the year. And I think that game against Clemson, I don't think that'll happen again if they meet in the ACC championship game. But but also don't remember, Georgia Tech still has to play Virginia Tech. And Georgia Tech beat Virginia Tech last year when they made it to the ACC championship game. So don't count out that either. But also going to Oklahoma, they pulled out another one against Texas, which I also understand this one because this is their biggest rival probably. Actually, I don't know if any Oklahoma State or Texas fans listens to this. Would you? I am curious to see for Oklahoma, who's their biggest rival? Okay, in Oklahoma State or Texas? I would assume Texas, but if people say, I would understand Oklahoma State since it is an in-state rival. But they were struggling a lot. Well, actually, they were up big early in this game. Then Texas came storming back, and Texas in this year could easily just be only have one or two losses instead of just three, because they easily could have won this game against Oklahoma yesterday. They easily also could have won the game at USC. So I'm not gonna give Oklahoma too much stick for that game against just Texas, just because it was a rivalry and Baker Mayfield came through when he needed to. Of course, it was also at the end of the game when they gave up that touchdown, was a very much so blown coverage by Texas. You'll leave Mark Andrews, I believe, wide open. But at the end of the day, Oklahoma won, Miami won, and USC won. So you can't give them too much stick. Yes, it was close, and all their wins honestly were against us respectable opponents. It wasn't like a very poor team they lost to, which I feel a lot of these upsets were. Really, the worst one probably was Clemson's against Syracuse, just because. But then also people don't remember that Syracuse last week, I think, gave NC State a good run for their money as well. So I don't think Syracuse is as bad as people think, but I think we're definitely out of the all the top 10 teams I think that lost. I think Syracuse was the worst team to win of those, but I think the most embarrassing one definitely was Wazoo against California, or against Cal Berkeley. But anyway, we're going to move on from that, and I'm going to also talk about the other teams that lost in the top 25, and Navy, Texas Tech, and what was it? Who was the other one? San Diego State. They were both. I could see. I thought Navy honestly was going to lose just coming in this one, because I think Memphis was a very good team. And so I respect Navy's loss, and I think Navy's still a very solid team. Same with Texas Tech. They lost to West Virginia, who's also a very good team. The more surprise was San Diego State, just because Boise State, when we saw them play Virginia earlier this year, and also, by the way, going back to what I said real quick about the Coastal, don't sleep on Virginia. This team is 5-1. So be on the lookout for the Cavaliers. They've played some very solid football this year, and went also, by the way, to the Blue Turf in Boise and absolutely annihilated Boise State. And of course, Boise State's other loss came into a very nice comeback winning by Washington State. But I think Boise State was kind of just like tired of being like not the team in the Mountain West, because they've always really have been since I think they joined. But San Diego State, I feel for them on that one, but I think they'll bounce back, and I think there's a very good chance we could see this game again in the Mountain West title game. Of course, there's two very good teams, and I think also with Texas Tech, I thought they were a good team, and I still think they're a good team. And same with because West Virginia, they're two. I think two losses they've had all year have been to Virginia Tech and TCU. So, and Will Grier is a very good quarterback. And imagine what Florida might be doing if they had him. Because that's the one thing Florida seems to be lacking. Of course, they still have been looking for their good quarterback since Tim Tebow. But anyway, going on from those, they all, unfortunately, it was unfortunate to see all of them lose. But I think Texas Tech is still going to give team who they play a good run for their money. They're not going to get blown out with that defense, I feel. Definitely, I think they may have arguably the best defense in the Pac-12. Besides, our second best, maybe TCU. And who knows, they can end up beating TCU when they play. So that'll be very interesting to see going down the road. Navy, of course, could beat two of those teams who are still in the top 20, or two of those teams in the top 25 right now from the American Athletic Conference, who and UCF in South Florida, because South Florida I'm still kind of a little iffy on, just because they haven't really played anybody, but they're going to definitely have a good showdown when they play Central Florida. Central Florida, wow, they've just come out of nowhere. I've been very impressed though with them. This is the best I think they've done since Blake Bortles was there and they won the Fiesta Bowl against Baylor a few years back. But anyway, I just wanted to touch up on those a little bit. They're not like, I can understand those games losing. Honestly, the most annoying one to me, obviously, of upsets that all happened in the top 25 was Clemson. But a lot of them were to very solid teams. They weren't like to very piss poor teams. It was like, like North Texas or Buffalo or Central Michigan or any of those teams. They were just solid opponents. It'd be a lot different, I feel, if they lost to, like, any of these teams lost to a team who hadn't even won a game yet. That'd be a little bit more different. But these teams are, I think, all very solid teams. The worst of them being Syracuse. The best of these upsets, the teams that got the upset, I probably would say West Virginia or Arizona State, definitely. Even though Memphis is the one of those teams, and LSU are the teams from that got into the top 25, which I will also touch up on the AP poll very shortly. I think that definitely West Virginia and Arizona State are the two best. I think Memphis is just, I don't think they would match up well against either of those teams. But anyway, we'll move on from that. I just wanted to touch up on those upsets, and we're gonna also I'm gonna do a new segment here this week, and now it's my best performances of the week, offensively and defensively. And I have a total of 3, and I'll have a couple honorable mentions as well. And for offensively, A.J. Dillon from Boston College, 272 yards on 39 carries and 3 touchdowns, including a very nice 75-yard run. He absolutely threw his man off of him, a Louisville defender off of him, and a big win against Louisville that won by a last-second field goal. And another one, Khalil Tate of Arizona. This dude came prior to last week, was a backup. And he just come in and just absolutely just done really well running the ball. He was 9 of 13 for 148 yards through the air passing, but then also had 230 yards on 15 carries and 2 touchdowns again. So Khalil Tate is a guy everyone in the country needs to keep a lookout on. This guy is very impressive. And finally, Michael Gallup from Colorado State, 13 receptions for 263 yards and 3 touchdowns in Colorado State's narrow win against Nevada. And of course, for honorable mention, we'll talk about Naheem Hines, very nice long touchdown run and a very nice punt return as well. And I don't know the yardage. I'm just talking about honorable mention here. And James Washington from Oklahoma State had over 200 yards in receiving at least one or two. I think 1 touchdown in this game, but a very solid performance for him. But defensively, first one, it's not going to be an individual player. It's going to be the whole Arizona State defense, just because they just absolutely shut down Washington in the game. I was very surprised by that. If anything, coming into this game, I thought it would be a high-scoring game. Arizona State held Washington to 230 yards of total offense and 7 points. Very impressive considering what we have seen from Washington this year with, of course, Jake Browning, Myles Gaskin, and Dante Pettis, and so on and so on. But yeah, that's what we'll be going. And also, Austin Hall of Memphis, 10 tackles and 2 interceptions, including the game winner, I believe, to beat Navy this weekend. And then also Jordan, what's his name, Konoski from Cal. He had a total of 11 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 1 interception, and their absolutely dominant win against Washington State. And then we'll go to honorable mention. I believe his name is Lone Jacob is his name. I can't remember. I didn't say what school he was from. I'll have to look that back up again. But Anyway, those were just my honorable mentions. I just want to give out some individual performances. I think that's fair, you know. But anyway, we're gonna move on to the AP poll now. Of course, was a very big shakeup in the AP poll. Of course, this is the AP poll, you know, so we don't know necessarily what is gonna be. It doesn't represent, in my opinion, the college football playoff at all. Still, but you know, I thought if Clemson had lost, I feel like they would have dropped like a stone if it was just Clemson who had lost in the top 10. But thankfully, they only fell to 7 since 4 of the top 10 teams lost. And I respect all the other teams ahead of them, except Ohio State. And let me tell you why I don't respect Ohio State being ahead of Clemson, or even Miami for that matter. All their wins they've had have been against nobodies. Nobody's. Everyone talks about, oh, they are absolutely dominating all these teams they play. Yeah, they beat Nebraska. Nebraska's terrible. They lost to Northern Illinois. Yes, they beat Maryland. Ever since that win against Texas, Maryland has not been the same team because their star quarterback, or their starting quarterback, I believe, at the beginning of the year has been injured. Yeah, they beat UNLV. Oh, congratulations. UNLV is honestly absolute garbage. In Indiana, their best win probably might be against Indiana or Maryland, and that's honestly pretty pathetic. Their best game, the best game they had all year, at least like, matchup-wise, was Oklahoma, and what happens? Oh, they lost, and they got absolutely, in my opinion, dominated in the second half of that game. So I am still not really in an Ohio State. Yes, I sound like an Ohio State hater, but I just can't buy into it. I can't get on the hype train for Ohio State because I can't get on JT Barrett. He's not. If you make him throw the deep ball, he's not going to do good. You know, he runs all these little dumps and dinks, and teams are eventually going to learn to take it away from that, and they're going to be able to match up enough defensively on there. But of course, I will give Dobbins, their running back, their freshman running back, some credit. But at the end of the day, I'm not in Ohio State still. We'll see what happens as this season goes along because they still have Michigan State, Michigan, and Penn State going down the road. But yeah, I did want to touch up on Ohio State, but I think Clemson, honestly, 7's a fair considering like. They got struggled, or it was just because they lost. Yes, they only lost by 3, so it's not. I understand them not falling too far. I think Miami is the only reason I say Miami is good where they are is because they do have 2 good wins against Georgia Tech and Florida State, but at the end of the day, they still haven't beaten the top 25 opponent. So that's got to be a little bit concerning for that. Or only reason I get why they didn't go as high as they did. Oklahoma jumping, or did they jump? No, they didn't jump Oklahoma State, but being right behind them, I think that's understandable. USC at 11, I think is fair as well. You know, Oklahoma State out of those 3 had the best performance this weekend against Baylor, and that was also a team that Oklahoma very much struggled with, and only I think won by a touchdown as well. And then Washington at 12, I'm completely fair with that since Clemson fell 5 and they fell 7. I mean, you know, that's understandable just because more of the teams in like the teens and so in the 20s won. And then Auburn, I'm more surprised though at how far Auburn fell compared to Washington State. And here's why. It's just because the way Washington State got absolutely dominated. I think 15 for them is very generous from the AP poll, honestly. Yes, I guess they're going to look back at the win against USC and say that was a bit really helpful to them, but I don't think they should. I think if anything, they should have fallen behind Auburn because Auburn at least was in a dogfight for that whole game. Washington State was never in the game against California from the start, and California is still not that good. They didn't even get any votes in the AP poll at all to even be in the top 25. So I don't get the thing with Washington State, but I think that, like when Blake and I were talking earlier, Notre Dame, that's a team that I never thought I'd be saying that this year just because of how poor they did last year. But I remember they were very close to being on the other side of the spectrum. They lost a lot of close games. I think they overall as a whole, they've learned to win a lot of these games. Now, of course, besides Georgia, they haven't really played anybody really that tough yet. But this second half of the season, if they win all those games, they deserve to be in the playoff. That's all I'm going to say. When your one loss was a 1-point loss to Georgia, who is currently number 3 in the AP poll, which I completely understand, or is a completely fair argument considering what they have done. You cannot say no to Notre Dame, but I hope not because that may give Clemson a little bit more of the iffy. But if Notre Dame wins are out this rest of this year, they're going to easily have the strongest resume, in my opinion, in the country because Alabama's definitely not. Who right now, they are only going to play, I think, 2 teams in the top 25 the rest of the year. And as of right now, LSU and Auburn. And who knows? LSU could easily fall out again. We depends on how consistent they are. And probably their toughest game will be against Auburn. I think Florida State eventually will come back into the top 25, and I think that win is still very respectable because it was when they had DeAndre Francois, who until like it was towards the end of the game when he got hurt. So I don't think him being in there would have like caused Florida State to get a nice comeback or anything because we had seen him, the Alabama defense absolutely dominate him, and the fact that for Alabama they've still been a machine. They looked like it last weekend. Jalen Hurts finally threw an interception, and it took a diving one to get it. So, Jalen Hurts is still playing very well. They're very efficient, and Damian Harris is still running, or going all over the place running the ball, playing very well for them. But I know one question that probably people wonder is why Georgia didn't jump Penn State because Penn State had the bye. If Georgia had dominated Missouri, I could have totally seen that, but they struggled in the first half. I was watching this game, and it almost looked like it was going to be a shootout with Missouri. And Missouri was easily, in my opinion, the worst team in the SEC. No doubt about it. Case closed on that one. But it was more, if they had dominated the whole game, I could have seen it. But also, it was Missouri. So if they didn't, I understand that. And Penn State still is one of my favorites. Yes, they haven't played one great yet, but this second half of the season as well, it's going to be good for them as well. I mean, yes, the only thing with Penn State is their out-of-conference schedule is going to be a little but they're going to play currently three top 25 teams in the Big Ten East, and they'll probably play Wisconsin, who is also sleeping under the radar, in my opinion, at least defensively. More likely the winner of the West will be Wisconsin, I feel, unless they just completely have a crap ton of injuries or just completely just turn into a train wreck, which I don't see happening. They were playing, I think, very well defensively. I can't see it happening. But, I think Penn State still, is a completely fair pick at number 2. And then TCU at 4, very understandable, or very respectable as well. They've had some very good wins against Oklahoma State. Originally it was going to be a good win against Arkansas, which they dominated that game. So it's not like they held on to like an Arkansas team that is like is completely derailed and just playing absolutely awful right now. But they also have a good win against West Virginia, who climbed back into the top 25 this week. And of course, LSU and Memphis as well. I think, has Memphis been in the top 25? I think so. Or maybe they didn't until, maybe they were when they played. I don't remember. But, there wasn't any really like new faces who haven't been in the top 25 poll at all as well. Which is, I think I understand that completely. Just because, there wasn't really any teams besides them who really got one. I think Arizona State I feel like Arizona State should have gotten votes because they have 2 very good wins against Oregon and Washington now. But I'm surprised they didn't get it. I guess it's because those 3 losses, they are kind of hurting them. But, of course, the teams who got the most votes that didn't get in, though, San Diego State, understandable. Texas A&M, completely understandable. They have really played well this year since that blown lead to UCLA at the beginning of the year. Kevin Sumlin has turned this team around, I think, as a whole. They beat Florida last weekend. They gave Alabama a dogfight for sure. That game was close almost to the very end. Their defense is playing lights out right now. They just need some help on offense for their sake. And Travion Williams still needs, I think, a little bit more. Needs to get back more into the game. I feel a little bit. He's been kind of off his stride a little bit, but I get Texas A&M getting that many votes, and then of course Iowa State getting 16 votes. Iowa State, that win, they're playing pretty well right now. Of course, Texas beat them, but they beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma with the backup quarterback who was also playing linebacker. Just remember that. And they had another good win this past week again. So I think Iowa State getting votes is completely understandable. Same with Kentucky, who's 5-1. And Mississippi State only has 2 losses. Yes, they were absolutely dominating those losses. But remember, this team also dominated LSU. So I get why they get some votes. And, of course, Navy got 2, Iowa got 2, South Carolina got 2. Not really a big fan of that, considering they barely beat Tennessee by like a last-second prayer of making a stop on the goal line. I'm still not on the South Carolina hype train, especially now since they don't have Deebo Samuel still. Then who else got it? Texas Tech still got 2 votes, understandable, because they did lose to a very solid West Virginia team. Marshall getting a vote, I like it. I think they're 4-2 or something like that. are like that right now. I don't know. I haven't really gotten the chance to look at Marshall, so I'll be definitely keeping an eye out for them. Oh, and Virginia, by the way, got 10 votes, which are very deserving. They are 5-1. This Virginia team is under the radar in the ACC Coastal. Now, I'm not saying they're going to make it to the ACC championship game, but they're going to be in the hunt for the ACC Coastal. I originally said it was a 3-horse race. Right now, it's a 4-horse race. You got to throw in Virginia in there. They've had some very good wins against Boise State. Duke, which has actually been not looking as good now, but they're still winning. Beat North Carolina last weekend, who, of course, North Carolina has been kind of a train wreck this year. But Virginia, I think, is a team that's very much under the radar this year. Definitely. I'm very impressed with what they've done in their turnaround. I think it's their second year under the new coach. I forgot their head coach's name. But, Florida State getting a vote, Georgia Tech getting a vote. Florida State barely beat Duke. Georgia Tech, of course, lost. I think Georgia Tech is still a very good team, and they're going to give everyone their best run. I think, honestly, the only game I can see them getting blown out and all is Clemson, is because I know Brent Venables, and I know he has gotten that triple option down. And now he has got a bye to prepare for it, and after a very tough loss, he's going to be ready to go for this one. So, I'm sorry, Georgia Tech, but I hope they make it back to the top 25 for that game. I'm happy it's a primetime game, but I don't know, honestly, with this one. But anyway, so... Dang, I've actually gone a lot longer than I expected to going just to the AP poll. But anyway, my new top 4 though, it's actually the same as the AP poll. It's not really anything different. It's Alabama 1, Penn State 2, Georgia 3, TCU 4. But then here's what I'm gonna say is for 5 and 6, I have Wisconsin at 5 and I have Clemson at 6. And the reason I have Clemson at 6 over Ohio State is, like I said, Ohio State's resume, besides the loss to Oklahoma, they only have that one loss, but they haven't had any significant wins. Clemson has. We've seen it. They went on the road to Virginia Tech and won there. They beat Auburn at home, who's still top 25. The win at Louisville is not looking as good now, but it's still a good win. It's still a good win. And beating Wake Forest is a good win. And you only lost to Syracuse by 3 when your quarterback got hurt midway during the game. And, that's got to be tough. And also, I hope Kelly Bryant is back because he's a great quarterback, I feel. Definitely been under the radar this year. But Clemson's going to get better. Are going to get healthy, I think, as well. And I think they definitely could beat Ohio State. I don't know if necessarily it'll be 31-0. Because, OH, 31-0. Sorry, I have to take shots because, it's Ohio State. But anyway, enough of that. I just wanted to give a brief touch up on the top 20, on the top 4. It's really basically very similar to the AP poll now. I think that the top 5 is very respected, and I get maybe Ohio State just because they've been winning a lot more winning lately, and Clemson of course just lost. But anyway, I'm gonna also move on to the Heisman watch here, and it's basically the same. Saquon Barkley is still my favorite. Baker Mayfield had another very solid game. Bryce Love, another very solid game as well. But here's my dark horse. And I think a lot of people, in my opinion, are not talking about this guy at all. Damian Harris of Alabama. This guy has been playing lights out. I thought Bo Scarborough was going to be the back this year for Alabama. Damian Harris, man, has just been absolutely phenomenal for Alabama. He didn't really play much. When I was at the national championship game when we played Alabama, it was more Bo Scarborough. But now, and it's been Damian Harris. It's just everywhere. I think people forgot about Damian Harris just because of how well Bo Scarborough played. He is on a mission right now, so I would keep him as a dark horse right now. I think people really need to keep an eye on that name. He on the first play, Alabama had the ball offensively this past game against Arkansas. He went, I think, for 75 yards for a touchdown. So Damian Harris, definitely a very solid player to keep an eye out for as well. But anyway, that's my Heisman watches, and then I'm just going to touch up briefly here on these. There's some big matchups here in Week 8, starting, of course, with Michigan at Penn State. This will be help us decide what is going on in the Big East as a whole, or not the Big East, Big Ten East. Start putting the pieces together, this puzzle slowly. And then, of course, the other big matchup is USC at Notre Dame. And this is big because if USC wins this game and wins out, they're going to make a very strong case to get in the playoff and be that team. Like Blake said earlier on the show, that they are definitely the best team, or this will have the best resume for if they win out, or have the best chance to get in. Because the committee loves when you schedule very tough non-conference games, and they are going to happen. And of course, with Notre Dame as well, if they win out in this second half of the season, if they don't put Notre Dame in, if they win the rest of their games, that is just straight up robbery in my opinion. Just absolutely ridiculous. Because they're going to have beaten some very good teams in NC State, Stanford, Miami, and USC. And their toughest, their 1 point loss to Georgia against a very good team, or a very good Georgia team who knows, could end up being the SEC champions. I think this is going to be a very big step in seeing who is eliminated from playoff contention. If USC loses this game, though, I think they're out of playoff contention because of a 2-loss team. They would need so much help in front of them. They need to have teams losing left and right. It would really have to be like the 2007 season where we had just had teams losing left and right, and actually got even a 10-2 team or 10-3 or as a 11-2 team to the BCS championship game. But I think also though Penn State definitely is good. Is going to be the clear favorite against Michigan. I understand why. I think Penn State is still. This is going to be their toughest test by far. I don't know if it's going to be a whiteout or not in Happy Valley. I assume so. I feel, but it's going to be. I think it's Penn State could easily run away with this one. I've not been impressed with Michigan offensively. Their defense has been. They've been pretty good, but their offense has just not been good enough for me to like. In these big games from get really too excited about it. I mean, that win against Florida, it was just, man, I more expected that, but Florida also really isn't that good, and we've seen it again. We saw it again this past weekend. They choked away against A&M, lost to LSU. Florida finally is getting, I think, put in their place. Thank God. They were so lucky to win the East the last 2 years in the SEC, in my opinion. Sorry, I'm going on a little rant here about Florida, but anyway, that's just that. But anyway, those 2 games are going to be very intriguing. I'm very excited for those. But anyway, let's get to the week 8 picks here. It's been a while. I'm actually very excited about these. So we're going to first off with Memphis at Houston, and for me, this is I think 2 very solid teams. Houston's still not a bad team, even though Tom Herman left as head coach. No more, of course, what was his name? I think Ward as their quarterback. But last week, a very embarrassing loss to they got blown out by a very bad Tulsa team. I think Memphis wins this one pretty comfortably by at least 2 or 3 touchdowns or so. Yeah, but yes, Memphis Tigers get this one done on the road in Houston. Louisville, Florida State. If you were going to tell me at the beginning of this season that both of these teams were going to be not unranked when it came to this game, I would have laughed at you. No way. And heck, I'm very surprised. But, I don't know what's going on with Louisville right now, but their defense is absolutely awful. And Florida State's offense is getting better each week. Cam Akers, of course, their freshman running back, is starting to get it going. I think Florida State doesn't have too much trouble with this one stopping Lamar Jackson at home. But their defense also needs to play better at Florida State. But I think Florida State gets this one done by 2 touchdowns or so. And next Blake and I talked about or touched up on this earlier. Arizona State at Utah. Utah is a very is a team that's going to give you your best shot no matter what. We've seen it year in and year out. They are not a team that gets blown out. They all their losses usually are very close losses. They're dogfights. This team is a scrappy bunch, and I think they're going to give Arizona State a good their best shot as well. But I think Arizona State, this could be a huge turning point for them. I think Manny Wilkinson is going to have himself a day throwing the ball, and hopefully Kalen Balaj gets going. Because it's been kind of sad to see him not be being as productive as he was last year. But I like the Sun Devils in this one. Very close. I think they win this one by a touchdown or so. But it's going to be, I think Arizona State is a team that's going to be fun to watch the second half of the season for sure. And next we got Kentucky and Mississippi State. And these teams are, Kentucky's 5-1, Mississippi State 4-2. Of course, I think people kind of wrote Mississippi State off just because of those 2 very poor losses they had against performances they had against Georgia and Auburn back-to-back weeks. Who are both very good teams, don't get me wrong, but I think this week Kentucky is still a very good team. I think Kentucky gets this one done in Starkville. You know, I could easily be wrong on this one. This is more of an upset pick because I think Mississippi State, while yes they got blown out 2 times, I don't think Kentucky has been just kind of shaky against those not so good teams. I mean, yes, that loss to Florida is looking worse and worse. I mean, they are very close to being undefeated, but I think I'm going Kentucky here in an upset. I think they're going to show up for this game and win this one. Next, Wake Forest at Georgia Tech, and Wake Forest is still a good team. Their 2 losses, Florida State and Clemson. So people, I think, kind of haven't been talking about Wake Forest, but they should. But I think Georgia Tech is going to bounce back. They are going to be very mad about this loss that they just had, where they basically gave the game away at Miami. I like the Yellow Jackets in this one to end up, I think, running away with it pretty big in this one. When Traquan Marshall has also been one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch this year. That triple option offense is very fun to watch. Jackets win this one pretty comfortably, I'd say. Oklahoma State at Texas, and this one's a very interesting one to me. Oklahoma State's, I think, finally starting to get their rhythm back. Mason Rudolph had a very good game last week, so did James Washington. In Texas, of course, had a very tough loss to Oklahoma. But I think Texas bounces back this week. I'm going with Texas and an upset here by a field goal in Austin. It's going to be a dogfight, but I love the Longhorns defense to slow down this Oklahoma State offense. I like the Longhorns in this one by a field goal. But now, anyway, going on to that, Iowa State at Texas Tech. I didn't think I'd be ever talking about this game, really, just because maybe Texas Tech, I understand talking about them, but not Iowa State. And, I've been very impressed to see what Iowa State's done, especially with that win at Oklahoma. But I think Texas Tech, like I said, a team that's going to be coming off a loss, they're going to be hungry. This defense is still, I think, easily one of the top 2 in the Big 12. I like the Red Raiders in this one to run away with it, too. And their offense, I think, is still very good. Like I said, Red Raiders easily in this one. Central Florida at Navy. Of course, this would have been a top 25 matchup if it weren't for Navy losing to Memphis, who UCF blew out. I think I like UCF in this one. I do. I think UCF right now is definitely the team from the group of 5 conferences to make a push for a New Year's Six. They're going to have some very good wins. I mean, because the American Athletic Conference is actually not as bad this year as we think. I mean, they have, I think, 3 top 25 teams right now, of course, with South Florida in there as well. A team who they haven't really played anybody yet, so we're still interested in to see how they will perform against teams like Navy, UCF, and Memphis. But I do like the Golden Knights in this one to get this one done on the road at Navy. And then also Tennessee at Alabama. I really don't know why I'm putting this one in there because it's going to be a blowout. But it's a big game. It's third Saturday in October, a very big rivalry game. The 100th time also these two teams have played. But it's going to be Alabama all day. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be worse than the loss at home to Georgia, but it's going to be dang close. It's going to be ugly, and Alabama is just going to run away with it, in my opinion. Man, Butch Jones, you might want to start packing your things because I think it's time for him to go bye-bye at Tennessee. They are a train wreck right there right now. Alabama gets this one done, no problem. And then next we also have Oklahoma at Kansas State. Kansas State was a team that I think people were very high on coming into this year, but they kind of fallen off. That loss to Vanderbilt, I think, has really hurt them. Their offense has just kind of been like nowhere. They weren't last week against TCU. I think maybe they could give this make this game tough for Oklahoma, just because Oklahoma's defense is just, since the Ohio State game, has just been kind of poor. But I do like Oklahoma to win this one by maybe 2 touchdowns or so. This should be a good game, but I think Oklahoma runs away with it in the end. Next game, I didn't think I'd be talking about this one either. Syracuse at Miami, another very good game, but I think the Canes they're gonna get the Syracuse best shot. We know Syracuse is for real, but you just hope Syracuse doesn't have a hangover for that win against Clemson. But I think this game is going to be a lot closer than people are thinking. But I think Miami does get it done even without Mark Walton. Mark Richt is a great coach. I loved him when he was at Georgia. But it was time for them to move on. But I do like the Canes in this one by a touchdown or so. And then next, now the top 25 matchups in this week, USC at Notre Dame. This one, it's we've seen what Notre Dame did in the spotlight earlier this year. They lost to Georgia by 1. We've seen did I say USC? I think I said Notre Dame. Well, I meant to say whatever it is. I meant to say Notre Dame lost to Georgia at home by 1. It's looking better and better each week. But I think the turnovers are just going to be too much for Sam Darnold. I like Notre Dame in this game. I just don't think USC can, if they can't keep the turnovers down, this one even could get ugly. But they're playing very well with all the injuries they have. But I think Notre Dame is easily the better team here. Josh Adams is, I think, going to have himself also a field day running the ball. I like Notre Dame in this one by a touchdown or 2. And then finally, the other big one. This will be on ABC at 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Michigan at Penn State. This game is, I think, I think this is one where I think Michigan might drop out of the top 25 because their offensive lack of production is showing. They barely beat Indiana last week. Their defense is good, don't get me wrong, but their offense has just not been able to cut it this year, especially without Wilton Spade. I don't know if he's coming back this week or not, but I think Penn State is still easily my favorite to win the East. I like them in this one by I think it'll be more low scoring. I think it'll be Penn State will get in the 20s though, and Saquon Barkley will still have a very solid game. I like Penn State in this one by 2 touchdowns or so. Oh, a very comfortable win for them. And then, of course, I had my upset alert. And last time I did it, Troy at LSU finally got one of those right. Thank God. But anyway, enough of that. I'm going to say Indiana and Michigan State. And the reason why I said Indiana has also been, I think, a team that people have just kind of like dropped off. Of course, they got blown out by Ohio State, but they gave Michigan last week all they could handle and took them to overtime, just where they lost this game. But I do think Indiana has a good chance to win this game. And for those who don't know, these upset alerts are more like my super dog. If you watch College Game Day, that's how I kind of look at these games as well. But yeah, Indiana and Michigan State. I'll go with that as my upset alert with this week. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Kos Sports Show again. Of course, if you guys haven't already be on YouTube, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my to me for more podcasts. I hopefully may try and start doing these again weekly, and might just drop my highlight videos just because this dang YouTube algorithm. Yes, I am going to complain about that because it is very frustrating. Because my views have just been down since that has really started. But I may just start going with just the Kos Sports Show in general, because I do also want to get more callers on the show, because I hopefully we'll try and get people like Blake back from Harris Highlights. I plan on getting other people, WTD Productions, hopefully Scott from Just Bomb Productions. I'm planning on getting some more and more guys in here on the show to talk about football over with you. Also CN Taco, big Tennessee fan around where I am. Chris Lee over he a big Florida fan. I'm sure some of you guys have seen his stuff he makes some nice Florida stuff. But anyway, that I just wanted to touch up on this week, and go up and see what's going on this upcoming week. Now, anyway, I hope you all have a great week and enjoy this upcoming weekend of college football. And I will hopefully see you back next time here on the Kos Sports Show.